Nam mô Bổn Sư Thích Ca Mâu Ni Phật. Nam mô Bổn Sư Thích Ca Mâu Ni Phật. Nam mô Bổn Sư Thích Ca Mâu Ni Phật. So I have come here to talk on the topic of importance of theory for practice that liberates the mind. And this will be the topic for today, tomorrow, and after 3 days also. So we have 3 days to discuss this topic. Then you may ask why I have chosen this topic. Some of you may be my students for this 2 years course. In this 2 years course I have been talking about the theory of practice that liberates the mind from the perspective of the Yogacara, and I have compared to some extent with the Theravada. And last time I was here I presented the similar topic from the point of view of Theravada and compared to some extent, little bit, with Yogacara. So these two courses, in a way, they are complementary, dealing with similar subjects from different points of view. Now, Buddhism is, in a way, considered to be religion, but it is not the religion in the traditional sense as we understand it in the West. In the West, religion is based on the books of revelation. The Jewish Bible, the Christian Bible, the Quran. We study it and we believe, and all the works that deal with religion, in a way, they refer to these books. So if you believe in Christianity, you refer to the Bible. If you believe in Quran, you refer to the Quran. If you believe in Christianity, you refer to the Bible and especially to the New Testament. Now, in Buddhism, we have a vast corpus of literature which no one possibly can read in one life. Impossible. However hard you try, you will not be able to do so. If you want to study the Pali Canon, you will need a whole life for that. If you want to study the Chinese Canon or the Tibetan Canon, and these are the only traditions which are still alive, then again, the one life will not be enough to study the whole of Chinese Tripitaka, the 3 baskets of the scriptures. So we are confronted with incredible variety of views, incredible variety of topics, incredible variety of analysis from different points of view. And this is with the purpose of developing wisdom. We are developing wisdom because we investigate. We investigate, we compare. We do not automatically accept what the God has revealed. We also believe that the Buddha has got his realization by investigation. He investigated and practiced different theories under different teachers. Then he developed his own way, which we call in Buddhism the middle way. So in a way, all Buddhist scriptures, this vast corpus of literature, is concerned with the middle way. What is the middle way? When you have the middle way, you have realized Buddhism. When you don't have the middle way, you have not realized Buddhism. When you study Buddhism, you study theories and practices to realize the middle way. So, where do we find the middle way? We find it in theory and we find it in practice. And in order to find it in practice, we have to have a theory which works. Now, what is the meaning, before coming deep into our topic, what is the meaning of theory? Because we are using words actually, but they may have sometimes quite different meaning in different languages, or similar meaning, but yet not quite the same. In Sanskrit or Pali, the theory means siddhanta. Siddhanta means actually the way to realize. Theories can be also called darshana, which means seeing. So we need a theory to realize, and to realize means to see. The theory which makes you see is the suitable theory to realize. If you do not see, you cannot realize. And what is the object of your seeing? It is precisely the middle path. No matter what theory you use, it is supposed to bring you to the middle path. Now, we talk about importance of theory for practice that liberates the mind. Now, what is the meaning of liberation in Buddhism? The liberation means vimoksha or moksha. Vimoksha may be here better because vi means to separate and moksha means release. To separate in order to get release. So to get a release, we have to separate what is truth and what we need to realize the truth. So we need two things to get into the process of liberating the mind. We need a theory which makes us realize what in our experience is true, and through realizing what is true in our experience, we will realize that which is beyond our conditioning, because everything that we experience is our conditioning. And we are humans. The Buddha was also a human, so we have a similar conditioning. Now, according to Buddhism, in order to find the suitable theory and suitable practice for realization of liberation, you have to be being in the sphere of sensual gods or in the sphere of humans. And humans, they are actually, according to all religions, also Buddhism, we are, so to say, we are the children of the gods. We are called Manushya in India. Man, it means belonging to Manu, who is a god. We are called Adam, who is the first man, creation of the god also. Now we talk about liberation. For liberation we need a theory which reveals the correct practice. Unless we have understanding, theories to give us understanding how to practice correctly, to realize the middle way. And the middle way is to go beyond suffering. And the suffering means our defilements, the greed, the hate, which are the source of our ignorance, which brings us worries, stress, fears, all the things we are accustomed to live with. But Buddhism claims that all these things are not necessary when we understand the truth. The truth is called Dharma. And Dharma is that which has own nature. Swabhavam dharayati. It has own nature. And own nature you cannot break. You cannot break by logic. You cannot break by force. No way to break. So, because we suffer, we need Dharma. And Dharma means theory that works. Finally, when we think, we already imply theories. We always have some theory about something. Worldly things theory. In order to learn whatever worldly trade we learn, we need a theory that works. Then we can be good carpenters, we can be good engineers, we can be good lawyers, doctors. Because we have a theory that works. Then also we have theories based on logic. It has to work. We have theories based on realization. It has to work. And finally, we have the truth itself. When we have the truth itself, all theories, so to say, are just skillful means to realize the truth by itself. Then, when we have realized the truth by itself, we don't need any theories. But when we teach, again, we rely on words, so we rely on theories. And wherever there is thought, we compare something to the other thing. This is the nature of the thought. A comparison of something to another thing. When we want something, there is something we don't want. When something is beautiful, there is something which is not beautiful. When something is healthy, there is something which is unhealthy. So we are thinking in terms of comparisons. That's why in order to understand what is a theory, we have used also, I have used in my teaching, the way of comparison. Not just to accept that is it, but compare, to see, you can see the theory of liberation and the practice of this theory which leads to liberation from different points of view. Don't get stuck in one view. Buddha always encouraged us not to get stuck, not to get stuck in believing only this is truth, nothing else is truth. Now, the advantage of Chinese Buddhism, which I especially like to study, is that actually the great minds of Chinese Buddhism, they always emphasize the importance of seeing things from different perspectives. To syncretize rather than to condemn. The scholars and the people in the world mostly, they study by praising one theory and condemning another. But this should not be the Buddhist way of studying. The Buddhist way of studying should be ability to find common things in different theories. Now, as far as Buddha himself is concerned, same can be said about Christ. They did not, so to say, teach any system. The systems in Buddhism came much later. And the systems is the actually what Abhidharma teach. What the differences in Buddhism mostly based on the different systems of Abhidharma. What means Abhidharma? Abhidharma means teaching the Dharma in detail. Now, when you read the scriptures, you will not find explanation of different ideas in detail. For that you will have to go to Abhidharma. Abhidharma starts by Matrika. Matrika is also another name for Abhidharma, which means the list of the technical terms in Buddhism, which are then the matter of discussions in Abhidharma. And on the base of these discussions, you have the different systems which are actually using the same list of dharmas that the Buddha has taught, but explain them in a very different way. These dharmas that the Buddha has taught, they are, so to say, the key to understanding the fact that the Buddha has experienced, what Buddha has experienced. The fact of dependent origination, the fact of non-self. Because when you see dependent origination, you don't see the self. When you don't see the dependent origination, we are bound to see the self. What the Buddha has realized under the Bodhi tree is not something that we cannot see, that is a revelation of some God, of some angel. He has found the truth as the things are. And he became the things as they really are. So that's why in Buddhism you will find Theravada you will find in the Mahayana Bodhisattva tradition. The same idea. One who sees the Buddha sees the Dharma. One who sees the Dharma sees the Buddha. Because the Buddha incorporates the Dharma. Because he incorporates the Dharma, he goes beyond the conditionings which bind us to this world. And these conditionings, they are then explained in many different ways, but they are basically nothing but the defilements of our mind. Now, because we have defilements, we do not see the truth as it is. We do not understand our experience in the world as it is. Because we don't understand it as it is, we are bound. And because we are bound, we need Dharma. A Dharma both is a theory, the path, and the end of the path. So the Dharma is the yoga. Yoga actually in Indian philosophy means harmony. In Chinese they translate as Xiangyin, but Xiangyin with what? Xiangyin with that which is true, which is truth, which is beyond doubt. And that which is beyond doubt, which is true, where do you realize? You can only realize because there is no revelation by God, by angels. You have to realize it by investigating the nature of your experience. And our experience is based on mind. So, in other words, we are bound by the mind, and we are liberated by the mind. Because we are bound by the mind, therefore we are subjected to our conditioning. Now, we have different beings, all different conditioning. We have different classes of beings, all different conditioning. So, how to find out which conditioning is the true assessment of the truth and which conditioning is not true assessment of the truth? Because finally the theories, they are also ways of looking at things from certain perspective. And if you accept them automatically, which is precisely what Buddha always tried to not to do, then these theories, they are also bondage. Actually, theories, they are bondage. If they not do the job of releasing us from the trouble of suffering or trouble of pain. Of course, mental pain, because the physical pain no one can remove, not even the Buddha. One who is born is bound to get old, to get sick, to die. All this is suffering. But the Buddha has a very, very deep insight into suffering. That's why he became Buddha. It does not mean we have to suffer to become liberated, but we have to understand suffering to be liberated. So the insight of the Buddha is based on the insight into the nature of suffering. And the nature of suffering is in the depths of correct theory, is the depths of the experience of impermanence. And this is very difficult to see. We all have experience of suffering according to Buddhism, but we don't have the truth of suffering. This is a difference between a realized man and a common man. Common man has suffering, but has no truth of suffering. The one who has used a correct way to liberate his mind, correct theory and practice, he has a suffering, but he has also truth of suffering. Because he has truth of suffering, he goes beyond suffering. So here the correct theory leads to the correct result. Now the Buddhism teaches when you know the truth of suffering, you also know the truth of cause of suffering, you also know the truth of end of suffering, and you know also the truth of the path leading to the end of suffering. So actually, when you understand suffering, you understand all. But suffering is not really suffering. If suffering was the only reality, then there is nothing to do. We have no hope to get any liberation. But to understand suffering is the way to get liberation. This is a great difference which we have to be aware of. No matter what Buddhism we study, it is based on understanding the suffering. When we understand the suffering, we understand love, compassion, joy, equanimity. All is based in suffering. In Sanskrit, suffering is called dukkha. Du means bad, ka means sky. However smart we can be, however intelligent we can be, when we are born, we are confronted with suffering, the suffering of impermanence. When we are born, we will grow, we will age, we will get disease, we will die. This is the reality. We can see this reality in terms of the concept, but we don't see the reality in terms of the real experience. Why don't we see this reality in terms of the real experience? Because we project our experience by our concepts. Now, when you study Buddhism, you will find that actually the object of our defilements, the object of our suffering, is not the reality which is always on the move, which can be grasped. It can only be grasped by our concepts. We cannot grasp the reality because the reality appears and disappears in the same moment. We grasp it by concepts. And when we have a concept, we have the impression to gauge the reality, we have the impression that the reality stands. But the reality which we experience actually never stands as long as we hold to this reality. That which we hold can never stand. This is very important. Now, all the theories, they, in a way, they make our mind stand on a name. On a name. Now we are coming to the Yogacara perspective of reality. Because in this course I was mainly concerned with Yogacara. And Yogacara literally means, in Chinese they translate as Weishu. Chittamatrata, only mind. Or Vigyapti Matrata, only what the mind reveals. But actually the best name for this tradition is Yogacara. Yogacara means the conduct of the yogis. So the conduct of the yogis is the conduct from the Buddhist perspective which leads to the seeing of the middle way. That is the conduct of the yogi. And for that, he has to understand the nature of his experience. He has to understand the correct way to attain the release of the mind from suffering, and he has to understand the result and the result is of course the state of oneness, harmony, however you name it. That is the aim of yoga. Getting back to the harmony which we have lost by our defilements, by our impurity of the mind. So we learn all the Buddhas of the past, all the Buddhas of the present, all the Buddhas of the future teach one, and that is the purity of the mind. Because our mind is impure, we suffer. Because when the mind becomes pure, we suffer only physically, but we don't suffer mentally. Why? Because we have penetrated the nature of reality. Now, to penetrate the nature of reality, Do we really need a theory? That is a question. Some believe we don't need any theory. So that's why I will be talking about the importance of theory for practice that liberates the mind. Of course, we need a theory if you want to study anything in the world. We need a theory. You want to study sciences, we need a theory. You want to study medicine, we need a theory. Everything in the worldly reality is based on a theory. And as we all know, history of sciences is a history of theories, which always changing. Now, the models of the early scientists do not fit anymore to the present reality, and our present theories will be again laughable in the future, if there will be a future for this mankind. So theory is what gives us the feeling of stability. But we won't find really stability in the theory. We have to practice to correct theory to find stability. This is true of all the worldly theories. How much more for a theory which is to lead to the liberation of the mind from impurities. The theory has to be effective. If it is not effective, drop it. Don't believe in it. This is what the Buddha has taught. Drop everything that is countering your experience. And what is our experience in the world? It is actually the truth of suffering. But this truth of suffering is not really suffering. If it was really suffering, then we would have no liberation at all. But it is the truth of suffering. And the truth of suffering is based on the truth of impermanence. So no matter what Buddhism we study, first we study the truth of impermanence. Now some Buddhist theory studies the truth of impermanence only as a theory. You will find this in many so-called Mahayana traditions. You don't investigate deeply into the impermanence. You just study it as a theory. Now, why I have compared with other traditions, in the Agamas, tradition of the Agamas, and the only living tradition of the Agamas is Theravada, the Sthaviravada. You have to experience the fact of impermanence in everything. And everything is the body and the mind. Not just in theory, but in body and the mind. And body and the mind is ruled by the mind. Buddha has explained, because we have mind, we have the body and the mind. Because we have the body and the mind, we have the 6 senses and the 6 objects of the senses. Because we have 6 senses and 6 objects of the senses, we have the contact. Because we have the contact, we have the touch of the inner and the outer. We have the sensation. And because we have sensation, we can either have bondage or not to have bondage. Depends how we use the sensation. And sensation means receiving the object. In Chinese, Ling Na. And we receive the object. When we receive the object, we actually already receive it. Now, students in my Yogacara course in Theravada theory saying we receive it because we pay attention to the object. When we pay attention to the object, we receive it. If we don't pay attention to the object, we, strictly speaking, don't really receive the object. Yet we receive it, but reception is not a real reception because it cannot give rise to desire, greed. In Chinese translated as I. Actually, I is the best thing we have. There is not a better thing than the I. But this I translate the word tanha, which means thirst. So, because we have thirst for the sensations, we grasp. And because we grasp, we are subjected to suffering. And the suffering is always explained as the cycle of rebirth, Shen Su. Now, there are 2 ways in order to liberate and to find the right theory for liberation. We have to understand this cycle. We have to understand the Shensu. We have to understand how our worldly experience works. This is the only way to get to the middle way. To understand how this process of life and birth, how it actually works. And in Buddhism, we have 2 ways to understand it. Either we understand it intellectually, or we understand it by studying impermanence in detail until the mind turns away from impermanence, get disenchanted, disillusioned with impermanence, suffering of impermanence, and turn, so to say, having disenchanted from impermanence, turn away from impermanence to the sphere of knowledge, sphere of perception, sphere of realization, which transcends the suffering of impermanence. So this is one way. This is a way described in the Agamas, which are the base for our understanding of Buddhism, any Buddhism. Unless you explain impermanence, you cannot talk about Buddhism. You talk about Buddhism, you have to start with impermanence. But one way is to experience it deeply in meditation, in samadhi. Having experienced it deeply, you turn away from it, and you can only really effectively turn away from it when you have realized the middle way. When you have not realized the middle way, you cannot really turn away from it. Impossible. You want it, but you cannot achieve it. Impossible unless the middle way is there. Unless the middle way is there, you cannot go beyond impermanence. Going beyond impermanence does not mean you don't live in impermanence. The Arahat, the Buddha, still lives in impermanence. But living in impermanence, he is beyond the bondage of impermanence. So Buddhism has I sit just opposite of the lotus flower. The lotus flower is the symbol of living in purity in the suffering of impermanence. This is the correct understanding of Buddhism. This is the base of the correct theory. If we don't have this theory, this is not a correct theory. What we want to achieve by studying and practicing Buddhism is to live in the suffering of impermanence, but be beyond the bondage of the suffering. This can only be done when we have realized the truth of suffering. When we have realized the truth of suffering, so it may be a contradiction, but it is not. Then we know how to go beyond suffering. Otherwise we don't know. We only know the theories. And we compare this theory, that theory. Now we come to Yogacara. All these theories actually, they are products of our thinking, nothing else. And what is the meaning of all this? By thinking we are bound, but also by thinking we can be liberated. Depends how we use it. We are in trouble because we either don't want to think, or we want to think only in one way, not in another. Suppress one way of thinking. And think that this way of thinking is the only way. Or that we want to go beyond thinking by not thinking, but we don't go beyond thinking by not thinking, by forcing us not to think. Forcing us not to think is thinking. Anything we force by thinking. When we understand thinking, does not mean we do not think. This is a great mistake. Understanding thinking means we know how to use it for the correct practice. So here we come to the importance of the correct theory. Whatever theory we learn, finally is only theory. No one explains it so clearly like the Yogacara. So we come to Yogacara again. According to Yogacara, all theories, all that is defined by words, by names, by sentences, by syllables, by words, by concepts, is after all only a construction, nothing else. Construction of what? Construction of our thinking. This construction of our thinking is called vikalpa. Vi means differentiation. Kalpa from Sanskrit is klip, which means constructing. Constructing by differentiation. So, when you read a Yogacara, for example, the Chenwei 300 verses of Vaisha, 30 verses of Vaisha, it says, Yena yena vikalpena yad yad vastu vikalpyate vikalpito eva asau svabhavato navidyate. Whatever we think in terms of constructing by differentiation, it is only constructed and it has no own nature whatsoever. Now our thinking is living in this illusionary world which has no really nature whatsoever. But the reality has a nature. But it is not how we see it. When we pay attention to the reality, we already pay attention with a mind which has some judgment. That's why we pay attention. And when there is a judgment, I like it, I don't like it, I want it, I don't want it. This is what I need. This is beautiful, this is ugly. This is pleasant, this is unpleasant. This is myself. This belongs to me, this belongs to you. Of course, these things exist. But they have no nature. No nature that can actually be grasped. What we grasp are the concepts of these things. So we are, so to say, like living in a film. This film is the constructions of the mind, and we, because they come very fast, we put them together and they make our reality. And we cling to this reality to be something objective, something that we can grasp outside of our mind. Something which, so to say, is not part of the whole. But the reality you want to attain in Buddhism is the non-partial reality. According to Yogacara, the partial reality is the product of our thought. When we see one side of the thing, we do not see the other side of the thing. And our behavior is completely according to this rule. We always insist this is how it is, and we do not want to accept another perspective. So we always see the trouble outside. And we create the world of contradictions. Everything is contradicted. Everything is not as it should be. Now the reason is because we see only one side of the reality. When we see one side of the reality, we are not willing to see the other side of the reality. And it is because of our thinking. The fault is not in the reality, the fault is in our thinking. When we understand the thinking, we can understand that actually we are part of the whole, we are inseparable from the whole. So the correct theory, the correct liberation is that liberation, that thinking which brings us to this understanding. We are part of the whole and we cannot be separated from the whole. And where can we find this whole? It's only in the mind, because our reality, our constructed reality is our mind. Where else can we find it? The mind is our constructed reality. And this constructed reality is manifested by thinking. And where we think, we already, so to say, impose consciously or unconsciously. This is a great difference. Now, what is meditation? To be conscious, aware. This is meditation. Awareness. Awareness means putting things together by wisdom. This is awareness. Samprajanya. We are aware because we put things together by wisdom. But actually, putting things together means seeing the whole. This is the correct putting things together. If you don't see the whole, you cannot put things correctly together. That's why Buddhism, no matter what Buddhism you study, Buddhism emphasizes, unless you have realized the ultimate reality, you do not see your worldly experience objectively. You will always see it from the point of view of your little discriminating mind, which, as we have explained, has no self-nature whatsoever. It is product of our thinking. And product of our thinking, if you believe in Buddhism, of the endless thinking, passing through generation to generation. Because having a concept is sharing some theory about the world, about the nature of reality, which you have learned. And you think this theory works for you, but it may be just the poison for another. So, to understand Buddhism from the point of view of Yogacara is to understand that actually our world as we experience it is the product of our thinking. And we are caught in our own thought constructions. Like a spider caught in the spider net, or like the silk cocoon caught in the silk threads. And we turn around and turn around, but it is all just the theories. And theories is what actually separates the reality. So we need a theory which puts again the reality together. So one way to understand the reality, which is emphasized in the Theravada scriptures, you break the reality into constituent parts. These constituent parts, they are also Dharma. When you understand the Dharma, you don't understand the self. Because we don't understand the Dharma, we believe in a self. Now, what is Dharma? In Buddhism, when you start learning Buddhism, you learn 5 aggregates, the 12 spheres of perception, the 18 elements, the 22 faculties, the dependent origination, the 4 noble truths. This is Dharma. Now we come to the Yogacara, which explains the Bodhisattva path. So this is the worldly Dharma. But we need this worldly Dharma. Definitely we need it. But it is still a worldly Dharma. It is not something that truly exists. If it truly existed, you would be able to grasp it. But however you try, you will not grasp it, because all these things are the process. cause and effect. And the process you cannot grasp. If you grasp the process, what you grasp is actually your construction, mental construction about the process. And we live in this world of our mental constructions, which we believe to be true, unless we have realized the true nature of reality. The true nature of reality is actually oneness. Our theories are pieces which put this oneness together. So they are taught with a purpose to reveal the oneness. This is Yogacara. This is Mahayana. They are not taught as existing realities. But still, it does not mean that you do not need to understand all these. So from the Yogacara point of view, our reality as we experience it is based on names. So the Yogacara differentiates between the true names and the illusionary names. What are the true names? The true names is that which reveals the reality of wisdom, the reality of 5 aggregates, the reality of 12 bases, 18 elements. A common man does not see normally. What he sees is already concepts based on this reality. A car, a woman, a man, money, house. So this is these are the objects of our clinging, of our defilements. But they are, from the point of view of Yogacara, they are not the real names because they don't correspond then to the fact that this worldly reality is just 5 aggregates. And 5 aggregates is a process of change. A woman, a car, money, we don't see as a process of change. And we believe they really exist as some entities there outside of our mind constructions. Because we believe they are entities outside of our mind constructions, we believe that they can bring meaning to our existence. So when we grasp them, we will get satisfaction, And when we grasp something, then we are bound to push away something else. So this is the world of suffering. Grasping something, pushing something else away. Actually, what we grasp and what we push away is one concept as opposed to another concept. This is beautiful, this is ugly, this is good, this is bad. This is what I need, this is what I don't need. So we live divided by our constructions of the mind, by our concepts, through which the reality is observed by us. Whether we like it or not, when we pay attention to some object, try to experience yourself, if it is so. Don't believe what the speaker says. One has to find by himself. When you pay attention to something, you already have judgments coming. This is the nature of the worldly reality. When we pay attention to something, we already start evaluating. And when we evaluate, there come the chains of thinking, chains of thoughts. Chinese has a wonderful name for this chain of thoughts based on desire. Shilun, prapancha. We enjoy extending our sensations and our perceptions. Sensation and perceptions extended by desire, they are called shilun. Now, according to Yogacara, this shilun is the base of the seeds in our mind. Whether we know it or not know it, due to the experience of the previous shilun, we at present we are holding to the content of our experience. But actually what we are holding to is not reality, it is the concepts of reality, which we have constructed by thoughts. Because the thoughts delude us, we have to find also the how to think without clinging to thinking. Actually, when we think, we are already clinging to thinking, because the objects of our thinking, of our clinging, are our concepts, not the reality. We do not think about the worldly reality as it is, as a process. We think about the worldly reality as our concepts, which correspond to the reality. But our concepts are very different from the concepts of other beings. Now, in our society we have similar concepts. We cling to similar objects. When I see 1,000 Hong Kong dollars, I react in a different way than when I see 10 Hong Kong dollars. It is just a concept. It is nothing but a piece of paper. When a dog, cat sees or a bird, or a god sees this piece of paper and he does not care if it is written by on it 1,000 or if it is written on it 10. But for me, living in Hong Kong, it is the matter of the survival. I cannot take the 10 yuan as 1,000 yuan. If I do that, I will not be able to live here. So, what is the difference according to Buddhism? All Buddhism, no matter what Buddhism you study, the same principle. What is the difference between the realized mind and the non-realized mind? The realized mind also has to use a concept. Our speech is nothing but concepts. But he does not cling to the concepts. He does not cling to the names. He does not cling to the sentences. He does not cling to the syllables. He does not cling to the own characteristics of things or common characteristics of things created by the words, but he uses them to recreate, to stay in the unity, in the harmony. Not to break the harmony, because the concepts, words, and clinging to them break the harmony, but use them to stay in the harmony and to help others to find harmony. The theory and practice which teaches that is the correct theory and the correct practice which can definitely bring the liberation, which can definitely reveal nirvana, reveal the suchness. The nirvana, the suchness, means the state of pure mind, beyond that which binds the mind. Greed, hate, self-delusion, wrong view, doubt, wrong doubt, and all the different mental factors, jealousy, miserliness, anger, self-intoxication, and so on. Many of them you can study when you study Yogacara. So 6 main defilements, 20 secondary defilements, upakleshas. So this is because we are clinging to the concepts. This is all these keep on arising, but we don't cling to the reality. That's why the Yogacara explains actually the reality is unspeakable. Pukha shuo, pukha sui, anabilabhya, unutterable. But it does not mean we cannot utter it, we cannot speak about it, but we have to speak about it using correct theory and correct practice, which put things together on the base of wisdom. Now, according to Buddhism, you will find a verse in the Dhammapada. Saddena tarati yogam apamadena anavam viryena dukkham aceti panyaya visujati. Everything in that the Buddha teaches are actually the skillful means of wisdom, and which are the most important ones. The Buddha says, Saddha, by faith, if we have faith, we can cross the flood. Flood is another way for samsara. Shensu is a flood, suffering of samsara. We have to have faith. The faith, the Buddhist faith, cannot be a blind faith, cannot be a revelation. It is explained in Abhidhamma as okapana. Okapana means, again, from the same root like vikalpa, fenpie, but the correct O means ava, down, kalp means fabrication. You have to think in a correct way to put your mind on the things in the correct way. That is a faith. Abhidharma Kosha defines faith as love. When you think in the correct way, you have love. So you put things together. When you think in a non-correct way, you have no love, you divide the thing. No love, no compassion. Because you use your concept correctly, non-correctly. By dividing between you and outside world, between you and other beings, on the base of what you believe to be pleasant, what you believe to be unpleasant, what you believe to be neither pleasant nor unpleasant. But actually these sensations are changing all the time, because their object is not a reality but a constructed reality. And on this constructed reality of the sensation, we have the self and what belongs to the self. When we have these, we have Shensu. So this is the perspective of the Agamas. Now we come to Yogacara, which is the Bodhisattva perspective. So you have to go beyond the inside and the outside, the non-dual view. How to get beyond the non-dual view, to understand everything that you define in your experience in terms of svabhava, zishin, own character or own characteristic, does not exist except in your concept. This is Yogacara, except in your thinking. Then, our worldly differentiation is based on the concepts. Man, woman, I like, I don't like, money, car, house. So all our differentiation is based on the self-reality of this concept, that they really exist there outside, and they are realities which can be possessed, belong to me only. Because I like them. If I don't like them, I will get rid of them. This is how the mind bound is working. What I like, I will possess. What I don't like, I will discard. Because our mind works like that, undivided. Now all this, when you study the non-dual approach to Buddhism, all this is based on the differentiations, based on names. And because of this differentiation based on names, we then conceive the reality as divided. So we take things which are divided, we take them as one, as something we can possess. But in the one reality there is nothing to possess, because all is part of our constructed world. What we can possess is only our constructions. The reality we cannot possess. Because we know the reality we cannot possess, automatically we also know that there is not the self. Now there are two approaches to Buddhist meditation. Either we dissect the reality on the base of the non-self of the person, or we dissect the reality on the base of non-existence of the things. What things are not existent? The things which are concepts, which are names. They have no self-nature from the very beginning. And we see the reality by means of these things. In a way, of course, it is necessary. But what we cling to are the concepts, are the names. Because the reality as it is, we do not penetrate. So we take that which is not whole as a whole. So when we see the forest, we do not see the trees. When we see the trees, we do not see the forest. When we see the man or the woman, we do not see that we are all composed of many, many things. Body is composed of innumerable things. Mind is composed of many, many mental components. All of them have a different function, but they work together. They work together. How do they work together? On the base of non-reality of a self-existent nature. If we do not penetrate this reality of the non-existent self-nature, in the whatever we can grasp inside or outside, then we will always cling to our thinking. So thinking is nothing wrong. Of course, there are some very wrong theories which emphasize in order to get realization we have to suppress thinking. Nothing wrong in thinking. What is wrong is our clinging to the thinking. Nothing wrong in words which bring the thinking about. What is wrong is our clinging to the words. Nothing wrong in meanings, in theories. But it is very wrong to cling to the theories because they are all constructed on thinking. So the difference between the true theory which can bring a liberation and the wrong theory which can lead us astray is that the true theory has to put things together on a wisdom of harmony, of unity, of purity. Oh, there are many questions I see, so I should stop here for today. And tomorrow we will come into the second part in which I will try to explain how it is important to see Buddhism, which is to explain the correct theory and practice for liberation from different perspectives. Thank you. So now, the questions. What is Buddhism? Well, it is very simple. You don't need to ask me. Buddhism is from Buddha. Buddha means awakened one, and ism is logos. The logos, the understanding of what is the awakening. That is Buddhism. There is a huge gap between knowing cognitively the theories and being able to deconstruct our concepts. How can we put it into practice, the theory, better? Okay, this is very good. By understanding, first of all, by understanding the thinking, we have already explained. The thinking means constructing, and constructing means dividing. When you mindful how you actually experience reality, how you experience your body, how you experience your sensations based on body, how you experience the mind based on sensations, and how you experience the reality based on mind, then you can put the theory into practice better way, in the way of putting things together on wisdom, because the essence of mindfulness is wisdom, and wisdom is awareness. In Buddhism, wisdom and awareness are the synonym. When you are mindful, you can be aware. Aware of what? Of the true nature of your body. Now you study Yogacara, which cannot be grasped. What we grasp as a body is our concepts of the body. Then, sensation. Our sensation is based on receiving the body. When you are clear how you receive the body, how on the base of receiving the body you are either attached to the pleasant sensation or forcefully rejecting the unpleasant sensation, and when there is no either pleasant nor unpleasant sensation, you are in a state of uncertainty, dullness, or search for excitement. So this is how the mind, based on differentiating of sensation, and this is a worldly mind, works. And due to this, then we see the world in terms of what we want to possess, what we want to push away, and we construct the theories on this basis. So we have to deconstruct these theories, see the wrongness of these theories, which are based on possessing one thing and pushing away another thing. In the worldly reality, because we live in the world, it is necessary to some extent. Otherwise, very difficult to live. When the Buddha understood all this, he has left this family, he has left this palace, because he understood all this is suffering. When we live, we have to possess something. When we want to possess something, we have to push something away. All this is suffering. And how to go beyond suffering? We cannot, living in the world, we cannot get out of this complex, but we can understand it. By understanding it, penetrating it, we can live better and better. And the aim of a theory and aim of a real religion should be, and Buddhism is not a religion in a traditional sense, is to live a better life. This is the meaning of a correct theory. To live a better, meaningful life. Buddhism is the theory how to live a better and a meaningful life. This is Buddhism. And how to live a better and meaningful life, to be awakened. From the Yogacara point of view, to be awakened about the nature of the mind. It is by mind, by our thought, we are caught. It is by our thought, by going beyond the deconstructing thought, clinging to thought, we are liberated. When constructed reality is produce of our thinking, would it be the case that intellectuals would find it more difficult to realize the truth, etc. Intellectuals love thinking. Loving thinking is not a problem. It is a problem is not a loving thinking. Loving thinking is a wonderful thing. The problem is to clinging to our thinking. Because we believe that only this is truth, everything else is false. But loving thinking, intellectuals, Buddha was an intellectual. His disciples, most important disciples, all intellectuals. Nagarjuna was an intellectual. Asanga was an intellectual. All great personalities of Buddhism, they were intellectuals. To be intellectual means to develop intellect. And to develop intellect is the only way which can really help us for liberation. Because if we don't use intellect, we will never understand Buddhism. Impossible. We will never understand the middle way. So, intellect, correct use of intellect does not mean just collecting the informations. Correct use of intellect means that we base our intellect on a deep insight into the reality. Deep insight into the reality in Buddhism is the deep insight into dependent origination. Because Buddha find wholeness and complete realization on the base of penetrating the dependent origination, penetrating fully the worldly experience of beings, which is dependent origination. For that, he has done a hard job, but he has accomplished because he had, I have just explained, faith. By faith we go beyond the flood of samsara. He had apamada, means non-negligence. By non-negligence we go beyond the ocean, which is again samsara. And he had effort, right effort. By right effort, the verse I have quoted says, we go beyond suffering. And when we have these conditions, these causes, then the wisdom can purify us. Intellect can purify us. Finally, yoga is all about intellect, the correct use of intellect. So the middle way starts with right view and right thinking. When we have right view and right thinking, we can put things together not on the base of dividing, possessing something, pushing something away, but on the base of harmony. So finally, all boils down to intellect. But the true intellectuals are not just those who collect informations. Nowadays, unfortunately, it is true. But the true intellect is that intellect which tries hard to penetrate the reality of suffering in which we live, anxiety, worries, stress, to penetrate it, penetrate its causes, and remove these causes. This is all that actually the Buddha teaches. If we believe in Buddhism, then we believe that the theory he gives to achieve this aim is correct. So when we believe it is correct, it still does not mean we use it correctly. Not at all. It does not mean when we are Buddhists, we have understood Buddhism. The Buddhists also, they are angry, they have greed, they have self-delusion. What does it mean? The fault is not with Buddhism, because Buddhism is the theory and practice of awakening. The fault is with constructing their reality on the base of wrong view and wrong thinking. They call themselves Buddhists, but they are just not Buddhists. Just like you call yourself a Christian, the Jesus also called in order to realize your reality. You have to give up rather than accumulate. You have to give up. Give up what? Finally, it boils down to all. Give up your greed, give up your hate, give up your ignorance. The world is enduring huge suffering at the moment, as if our existing mode of living and economic functioning is being and will be completely turned upside down. What is the Buddhist inspiration in dealing with the realities? The Buddhism and the right philosophy exactly describes what is happening. Just you have to study it correctly. When we defile the mind by greed, we pollute the air. When the air is polluted, the water is polluted. When the water is polluted, the earth is polluted. When the earth is polluted, all kinds of epidemics, disasters will arise. This is what the Buddhism is teaching. Now, in order to deal with the problems of outer ecology, we have to deal with the problems of inner ecology, because the pollution comes from mind. We have the wrong theory that we can possess this world as it was something outside us. But the Buddhism teaches that the world is not something outside us. This is a wrong view. The world is dependent origination. If there is no mind, there is no world. If the mind is not polluted, we will try not to pollute the world. Because the mind is polluted, we pollute the world. When we pollute the world, it reacts, because all that we experience is action and reaction. So there is no thing, however bad it can be, from which we cannot learn. But when we refuse to learn, we are really in trouble. So what is happening now is a challenge to learn. So we can hope that the mankind will take this challenge and learn. The mankind went to First World War, did not learn much. Went to Second World War, did not learn much. So how will we learn? And by another disaster. If we don't learn by this disaster, another disasters will come. No doubt. Because you cannot divide the outer from the inner. The inner and outer is one reality. When you have a sensation of something, it is connected with your mind, and you cannot realize anything without sensation. And when we are not sensitive to the world, when we are not sensitive to animals, I have seen in Facebook in China, some burn the dogs, they eat them while still alive, they cook them. This is such an insensitivity, how we deal with the animals, like if they were not sensitive beings. Actually, animals in many aspects are more sensitive than us. They know exactly if you lead them to be butchered, to a butcher, or if you lead them to the meadow, to a pasture. But we behave like they were just things without a mind, without sensitivity. And due to this insensitivity, we treat the outside world as something which is there to be possessed. Because of this attitude, all disasters will come. We cannot possess the outside world. Who are we to possess the outside world? This is a question to ask. And the humanity has not asked this question. They take it for granted that this world is here to be possessed. And this is a tragedy of the modern civilization. How to distinguish the truth and the way to the truth. The truth and the way to the truth. In order to understand the truth, which is whole, you have to have the way, which is, truth is always pure. But you have to have a pure way to understand the truth which is pure. So the way, there has to be a pure way, which in Buddhism is called the middle way, to understand the reality which is always pure. The reality you cannot grasp is always pure. So this is a mystery to be found in our mind. We have to meditate to find it. Otherwise, no way. And that's why Buddhism does not teach any revelation from angels, gods, prophets. It teaches the things as they really are. And how can you find the things as they really are? By investigating. Investigating, most important, the process of thinking. Because our bondage is based on wrong thinking, wrong thought. Nothing wrong with thinking. This is a great mistake to think that thinking is wrong. But it is wrong to cling to the thinking which divides the reality. When we realize it, we will get to the right meditation. So that much for today. 愿以此功德普济一切，我等一众生皆共成佛道。Thank you, 阿弥陀佛。